Hello, this video is for the IXL activity titled Evaluate a Function. The three-character code for this activity is Romeo 96. At the time of this recording, this activity can be found at A1.Q.7. All right, so evaluating a function. It says use the following function rule to find f of 1. And you might be saying, what's this f of 1 thing? And then you see f of x equals 12 minus 8x. And you're used to seeing y here. Well, f of x is pretty much the same thing as y. Make sure I'm in white here. There we go. So f of x is pretty much interchangeable with the idea of y. What you're used to seeing in other activities is they would give you y equals 12 minus 8x, and then they would tell you solve for when, and then they would tell you x equals 1. And then you're like, oh, okay, yeah, just substitute it in there, and then I solve for it. Well, this is pretty much the same thing. You see that whenever you plug in a value of x and then do the work, you end up getting a y value. That is to say, x is the input, y is the output. So therefore, the y value pretty much is a function of x, and that's what f of x means. So this notation here, f of 1, means if you substitute a 1 in to the function here of 12 minus 8x, what would you get back? And remember that evaluate simply means to substitute and to solve. So let's go ahead and do that with this first one here. F of, and we're going to write it as f of 1 because 1 is what we're plugging in. And we're going to do 12 minus 8. And then wherever we see the x, we're just going to put a parenthesis there in the place of the variable and then put whatever it is that we're supposed to be substituting for 1. So in this case, we're going to have 12 minus 8 minus 1, or 8 times 1, excuse me, is 8. And then 12 minus 8 is 4. So in this case, f of 1 is 4 for this given function rule. Looking at the next slide, use the following function rule to find f of 8. This idea of function rule, that's just basically the equation, right? Or that is to say the expression, right? What's on one side of the equal sign. So whenever they talk about a function rule, they are basically just talking about the equation that they're giving you here on the other side of f of x. So in this case, we're just going to go ahead and fill in our f of x. And we're going to do f of 8 is what we want to know. And that's equal to, and we're just going to take our expression 2x squared, where we see the x, put in a parenthesis, and then fill in the rest. Now, what is x supposed to be? It's supposed to be 8. So let's go ahead and bring this down. 2 times, and then 8 squared, it's going to be 64. 8 times 8, 64, equals, and what is that, 128? So in this case, we're going to say that f of 8 is equal to 128. That's it. Just substitute it in and solve. On the next one here, we have f of 36. Use the following function rule to find f of 36. And we have f of x equals 12 times the square root of x, and then add 9. Let's go ahead and do a rewrite of our problem here. F of 36. This is equal to 12 times the square root of 36. And to that, we're going to add 9. So let's go ahead and do our first step here. We're going to do 12 times, what is the square root of 36? 6, right? Plus 9. Now you could say negative 36 or negative 6, right? Because that could also be it. But since they're not asking for it, we are to assume that it is the positive form of the square root. Let's go ahead and do the multiplication. 12 times 6 is what, 72. Bring down our plus 9. And then from there, we could go ahead and do 72 plus 9 is, what is that, 81. So the f of 36 is equal to 81. Now, some of these are going to get more complicated whenever we get toward the end, and you might want to use a calculator. So on this one here, let's go ahead and go to the calculator, and we'll go ahead and check that out. And what we want to put in here is We want to just type it in just like it is. The calculator pretty much knows the order operations for you. Sometimes you got to be tricky and tell it what to do. But in this case, let's go ahead and put in 12. And then we need a square root sign. So second key, square root. What do we want the square root of? Well, that's where the x is. So we're going to plug in that 36. I'm going to hit the arrow over key to get out from underneath the square root sign. And then do plus. And from there, I'm supposed to add 9. Now, if I've done all my work correctly, this should say 81 whenever I hit enter. And indeed, we get 81. Back over to our next slide here. Now this is where I'm definitely going to end up using a calculator, okay? So I don't want to do all those decimals, and I'm sure that you don't either. And besides, this activity is more so about understanding function notation, which is what this f of x thing is. That's known as function notation, and understanding whenever they throw a number in there in the parentheses instead of being f of x, and they say f of some value, that you understand the idea is to take that value, plug it in for whatever variable. It's going to be x, I think, on this activity almost all the time, but it could be f of b or f of m or f of q or anything like that. You just plug it in for that value that you see in the equation. So with that said, let's go ahead and do the f of 4.6, and that is equal to, and in this case, we're going to go ahead and take 1.65 x. I'm going to put another parenthesis in here, right? And this is where our value of 4.6 is going to go. And then we're supposed to go ahead and subtract 5.79, close the parenthesis, and then all that's supposed to be squared. All right, so I would take the 165, multiply it times the 4.6, I get a number, and subtract it. And as a matter of fact, let's use the calculator, and let's do this step by step as we go through, instead of plugging it all in at once. So let's start off with, first let me go ahead and clear my numbers out here. Now let's go ahead and do the 1.65 times the 4.6. So 1.65, we're going to multiply that times 4.6 equals, and that's going to give me 7.59. So over here, I still have my parenthesis, that's 7.59. That's from multiplying these two together right here. From that, I have to subtract 5.79, and then I'm supposed to square it. So let's go back to the calculator now. I have my 7.59. I'm supposed to subtract 5.79, and that's going to give me 1.8. So what I have in the parentheses is 1.8, and that's supposed to be squared. And I don't have 18 times 18 memorized, otherwise I might be able to square that, but I do have my 1.8 already in the calculator. So let's go ahead and square that. And that's going to give me an answer of, I guess I should have been keeping my equal signs going here. That's going to give me an answer of 3.24. So let's go ahead and see if we can get the calculator to do all of it in one step for us. Go back over to my calculator, clear that out. Now let's go ahead and do a parenthesis and do 1.65. We're going to multiply that times our value of x, which is 4.6. And then I'm going to subtract 5.79. And we should be good to go because the calculator should do the multiplication first, then the subtraction, all that inside of parentheses, and then raise it to the power of 2. Let's see, do we still get 3.24? Indeed we do. So, hey, I am good to go. Excuse me there. Look at the next problem we have here, and this will be our final problem on this one. The idea is we have f of 3. So let's go ahead and go with that. Yep, I got my white there. So it's supposed to be f of 3 equals negative 10.66 times 2 to the power of whatever x is, right? And x is 3. So right where we see this x for the exponent, we're going to put in a value of 3. And from that, we have to subtract 8.47. So in this case, I need to first take that 2 to the power of 3. So that's going to be negative 10.66. And I need to multiply that times 2 cubed is going to be 8. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8. Now from that, subtract 8.47. Now, in this case here, I want to go ahead and do this multiplication. And I want to go ahead and use a calculator for this one. Clear my stuff out from the last one, and let's do a negative. Remember that negative sign is different than a subtraction sign. It's down there next to the enter button. So negative 10.66, and I need to multiply that times 8. What do I get? I get negative 85, negative 85.28, and now bring down my minus 8.47, and I should be keep my equal signs here. And then I've already got the negative 85.28 in my calculator, so let's go ahead and subtract from it 8.47. And this gives me a difference of minus 885. Yeah, that's right. It's going to get more negative. That makes sense. So negative 93.75. Now let's try to plug the whole thing in to the calculator and see if we get the same result. On this one here, so let's do am I going to need parentheses? No, I don't think I will. So let's try it. Negative 10.66. Clear. Hold on. Negative 10.66. There we go. And I want to multiply that times 2 to the power of 3. Arrow button to get it out of the exponent. And from that, I should subtract 8.47. Now, I'm pretty sure that the calculator should do all the order operations for me correctly. I'm going to push the button. Hopefully, I get negative 93.75. Indeed, I do. Negative 93.75. So be sure to go ahead and use the calculator if you wish. Remember, it pretty much does the order operations for you. All right, so those are all of my examples for evaluate a function, activity Romeo 9 or 6. Now, go level up your learning.